We've started a little bit of a literature series with our summer interns, and we'd like to finish that off as our internship program ends with Jose Fernandez Rocha, who's going to spotlight the literature of one of my favorite children's authors, Roald Dahl. And who does not love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites.
So over to Jose. Can we find him?
All right. Am I all right? Yeah. Can everyone see my screen?
We can. Let's get started.
Yeah. Thank you, AJ, for that lovely introduction. So yeah, as AJ was mentioning, I'll be talking about Roald Dahl. Going through some of his childhood, some things that most people who know Roald Dahl, know his novels, might not know about him. Regarding his childhood, other things, and how he's impacted us today. Okay, so just a little bit about his childhood. So Roald Dahl, actually, if you see the image on the left, he's there with his sisters, and the image on the right just shows him at a later date. But basically, something interesting about Roald Dahl is that he was born in Wales to Norwegian parents. And the reason I bring that up is because his parents actually decided to name him after a Norwegian explorer. So Roald Amundsen was the first person to ever go to the South Pole, believe it or not. So they decided to name him after that, which I thought was very interesting as I was researching. And during his childhood, he went to many different boarding schools. And during these boarding schools, there was two major chocolate factory companies at the time, and they would give trials at the boarding schools that Roald Dahl would attend. And so, being able to get those chocolate bar trials, really inspired one of his most major works, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I will be discussing in more detail later on. All right, and so later on in his life, after going through those schools, he would actually join the military, which is something I know I didn't know until I researched it. And so he was actually involved in the Royal Air Force, serving in World War II during the 1940. One of his primary battles that he was involved in was the Battle of Athens. And so that's something, that I didn't know. And so the image on the left, you can see he's the one in the middle, and then the image on the right is one of the planes he's actually maneuvered during the war. All right, and here, later on in his life, after serving in the military, being involved, working in oil companies, he actually got married to Patricia Neal, who was a very famous actress at the time. And they had, 5 kids. And one of those kids actually got in a crash, right? They got hit by a taxi cab. And so the reason I bring that up is because his son, Theo, the one who got in the crash, actually had, brain injuries that weren't able to be resolved by the current technology in medicine at the time. And so Roald Dahl was actually a part of a team of 3 inventors who were able to make the Wade-Dahl till valve, which is the image you see on the right. So what this valve was, it was a tool that helped alleviate pressures in the brain and helped release some of those liquids that may have been impacted during the crash or any head injuries involved. And so, this wasn't only used on his son Theo, but on thousands of other children as well. All right, and we're starting to now get into when Roald Dahl actually did manage to start writing his major works. So Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was one of them, as well as You Only Live Twice. So he wrote both of these, and they were very successful. 1967, 1968. He started writing these, and I personally like the You Only Live Twice. It's one of my favorites. All right, and then after writing the screenplays, he really experienced success in television. He was involved in Alfred Hitchcock Presents for season 3 and season 4. So, and these were basically short stories, short episodes As you see, Tales of the Unexpected was his main series in Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And what he would do is write these comedic short acts that had often had a sinister ending or a twisted ending. And these were targeted more for adults rather than children, as most of his novels are geared towards. And so that's something different compared to what he is most known for. All right, and so now starting to get into some of his major novels, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, as Adrian mentioned at the beginning. This was a very interesting, successful story. And there were actually two film adaptations of this. So one was in 1971, featuring Gene Wilder, and another one in 2005, featuring Johnny Depp. And then another story that I really enjoyed that I want to talk about is the BFG, right? The Big Friendly Giant. And this one is very similar to his previous one that I detailed, because it also had two very successful film adaptations, one being in 1989 and another one being more recent in 2016. So I had a chance to watch that one recently, and it was really good. I really liked the story behind that one. Okay. And, now to get into, some of his scheming and literature, right? And just illustration. So the image on the right you'll see is a picture from his recipe book. So, believe it or not, Roald Dahl didn't just write novels or screenplays. He actually wrote a recipe book. And in this recipe book, it's really cool because it gives you a recipe of how to make, foods, beverages from his books. So in this one, you can see it says, I don't know if you could read it, but it says from the BFG, right? So this is a drink from the BFG, and it gives you a recipe on how to make it and everything, right? So I thought that was very, something very different compared to most novelists and screenwriters. And so the image on the left, you'll see it's another one of his books. But the interesting thing about this is, I don't know if you noticed based on the naming, Easteel Trot, but if you read that backwards, it's tortoise. Right? I don't know if anyone caught on to that, but so it is clever scheming, because this book is about a man who is in love with a woman who is then in love with a tortoise. So it's very clever scheming on Roald Dahl's part, I believe. All right, and now, I've been talking a lot about illustrations and Roald Dahl's life, but his major successes came from his books, right? These, he has a plethora of books, as detailed in the image, and these books were really able to captivate the audience's attention, not just with the illustrations by Quentin Blake, who were able to, seamlessly just express the storytelling cleverness of Roald Dahl, and I thought that it was such a unique style of art, and the way that both the art and the literature were both able to be combined into one to just bring out the story was very fascinating. And it's just something like I've never seen before, is very interesting. And, no matter the reader, right? If you're a child or adults, both alike can appreciate his works of art and illustrations, and how they were able to, or how we are able to connect to them with our personal experiences. So hopefully everyone learned something new about Roald Dahl today. Thank you.
Great. Hey, thank you very much, Jose. Who does not like any of his stories, right? Or particularly Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah,
So thank you for that
one,
fascinating overview of Roald Dahl.